Okay, so now let's talk about using Docs and Slides as interactive document. So we've only talked about Google Docs and Google Slides, but the idea about Google Apps is they're all interactive, right? So you don't have to be next to one another, physically next to one another, to interact on a document. And that's one of the best things, the most positive things about Google Apps. Okay, so if you want to follow along, click our notes. Okay, so the first thing we'll talk about are the different Google modes. So remember, Google had 3 modes: viewing, commenting, and editing. So the viewing isn't going to be helpful for interactive, right? Because they're just going to view your document. But the commenting now, so you can actually add comments to students' work, or other students can add comments to peer work. Right? They just highlight a section, they add a comment. So this will be helpful for advice, all that good stuff. And the best part about it is you can actually see the different people that commented, right? So when I pull up a comment, let's do this. So I'll comment. You can see it shows you that JT and NW is commenting. So you can see right away who's commenting and the different types of comments. So you can tell when students interact with another peer who's actually doing the interaction. So it's a way to keep them accountable. The other thing is the editing. And editing is good for 2 reasons. One is you can edit your students' work, or students can edit their peers' work, right? Which isn't bad. Okay, but I want to show you one thing that's really helpful is there's real-time editing. Right? So if I go back, let's do this. I'm going to open up a new web page or a new browser. Right? I'm going to go to my website. Okay, week 2. And I want to show you the real-time example. So this is a Google Sheet. So keep in mind, this is somebody viewing the website, so they're viewing this right now. And I'm going to go into my Drive, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my Excel sheet. Okay, I'm going to minimize this. So we want side by side. Okay, so now keep in mind, this is me working on, and if you give me permission to edit your stuff, I can go in and edit your things. And now watch what happens as I type on this, so I can make changes. I can say, hey, look, we need to make these all centered. And you can see that's exactly what happened on the other person. So they get to watch in real time what I'm doing. Right? And then, hey, look, I want to do borders here. So this is how I do borders. Right? And this equation is wrong. So as I show them how to do the right equation, then I'll go to B7. Right? So they can see me fixing things. Okay? So in real time, people can see you editing. So if students are having issues with something, as long as you have permission to edit, they can watch you edit things in real time. So I think that's a big deal for these interactive documents. Okay, that's one thing for student feedback, is I don't have to just give comments, I don't have to show after the fact edits. They can actually watch me edit things. Okay, and I can make comments while I'm doing it. All right, when we get into Google Docs, there was actually a suggestion part, so this is good for proofreading. This makes it interactive. I don't have to just show the finalized edits. I can have the suggestions where, I'm literally just making suggestions on what should be edited. All right, and I want to show you 2 examples on how I would use an interactive document. So the first is math. Right? So I'll go to my math example. So what I might do in a class, right, is I could have a nice little problem, and I'd assign names. So this is a group of 2, and I want the group of 2 to solve this. All right, so now they don't have to be next to each other. They can be at their homes. They can be in different countries. And then student 1 would start the first process, right? So would start the first step. So maybe they do 2x squared, right, plus 5x minus 3 equals 0, right? So they start with getting the equation equal to 0, right? And then the second person takes it from there. So maybe they notice that you can factor this. So they do 2x minus 1 and x plus 3. And then after they've done this, then the first student comes back and does the next step of the problem. So here's an interactive math document where they're working in pairs, right? And both students are dependent on the other's work. So I can't, as student 2, finish the entire problem until I have your next step. Okay, and then once they do all that, then I maybe have a little check step. Make that nice and bold, where student 1 starts the check process, student 2 comes back to it. So now they're coming back and forth, whether it's real time or maybe there's some time lapse, but they're interacting both on this document. So 2 big things. Their work is dependent on one another, and they're able to interact on the same document in different places. That's what's big about Google. So we're letting people interact. Okay, having said that, here's one issue, and you need to be careful. I can't just make one interactive document and send it to the whole class, because students, two different students will be typing on the exact same document. So you need to make separate documents for each group. Right? That's one big problem. So I can't make one document and send it to everybody because they're all going to type on one document, right? Unless you made multiple tables on one sheet, right? So you just have to have students have their own dedicated space on a Google Doc. So if you have one Google Doc and let everyone edit it, they're going to edit the exact same stuff. So either have multiple spaces on one Google Doc or multiple Google Docs, all right? Okay, another example would be maybe an English example. So I'll have students, after maybe we read a story or we just investigated some kind of a text, then I'd have students come in and fill in their vocabulary word. So every student would come in and just type in a vocabulary word. And then I'd have them come back and define one word. So they have to choose one word and define it. And again, this incorporates our two main points, right? That students can do this anywhere, right? Anywhere they have internet access. They don't have to be next to each other, and their work is dependent on their peers. I have to have you enter a word before I can define it. All right, so that's the idea of interactive documents. So make sure that students are accountable for their work and that they're dependent on their peers to finish the assignment, and that it's interactive in a sense that they can interact with it anywhere. They don't have to be next to each other. Okay, so let's talk about your challenge. So what I want you to do, I want you to construct an interactive assignment using Google Docs or Google Slides. The two I showed you were Google Docs. If you want to do a Google Slide, that's fine. You can choose any grade level and any content area. So make sure in your document you identify the content area and the grade level. Make sure it requires an interactive group size between 2 and 4. Okay, so you can't just pick a whole class. I want between 2 and 4. I want you to include a description of the activity and the intended group size. Then I want you to require students to be dependent on their peers to complete the assignment. And I want you to include an example with a minimum of 3 turns. All right, so if you look at my math one, so the example with 3 turns is I'd have to fill this out. Here's 1 turn. So then I'd have 2 turns and then 3 turns. Okay, so I want a minimum of 3 iterations. All right, I want you to fill in that example. All right, then I want you to do some reflection questions. So how will you ensure that each student has a unique document? All right, so that whole idea is I can't just produce one document and give it to everybody because they'll just all amend that document. All right, this has to be groups of 2 to 4. And then I also want to know, how will you ensure that students are interacting with their groups? So how are you going to make them accountable? So how are you going to make sure that students can complete the entire assignment without ever working with their group? Okay, and then sharing, create a new web page, right? Name the web page Interactive Assignment. And then on the web page, give me a description of the assignment, give me a link to the assignment. I want you to create a new navigation bar named Interactive Assignment, and then add this web page to that bar. Okay, and then make sure you share your documents with me so that JT can NW and give me permission. And just to be clear, my actual math example, right, doesn't have any of the extra stuff I'm asking for. So on your document, so if this were a math example, on your document, I want to see, identify, you're going to tell me the content area and the grade level, you're going to tell me the number of groups, right, and the description of the activity. So you're going to have all this stuff before the actual activity. And then these reflection questions can go at the end of your document. So at the end, just put reflection questions and then type the answers. Okay, so this can all go on one document. All right, again, if you have questions, comments, concerns, just email me, right, at the Wesleyan, so my J. Teakin Wesleyan email, not the NWU.